I am a huge fan of J-Space content in EVE Online, and I may be biased in that, but if I can inspire any of you to jump through a wormhole and give it a try, then I feel like my job will have been done. To that end, today I wanted to talk about a starter way to get going in Class 2 J-Space systems. We're going to be looking at the Caldari Drake, a battlecruiser that is surprisingly quick and easy to skill into, is completely alpha friendly, and runs Class 2 combat anomalies really easily. Like, genuinely, the hardest thing about running a Drake in a C2 anomaly is just keeping D-scan going, stopping yourself from just talking to your friends and being distracted whilst someone jumps you. The actual combat side of it is dead simple. It's good ISK, it's good fun, it's really easy to set up, and it's alpha friendly. So today, that's what we're going to be looking at in this video. Ahoy there folks, I'm Captain Benzie, and in this video we're going to be taking a look at the Caldari Drake battlecruiser, how we can fit this and fly this in Class 2 J-Space anomalies to make some surprisingly good ISK per hour ridiculously easily. This is alpha friendly, it doesn't take that long to skill into this either, you can work this quite quickly, especially if you're using my reference code to make sure you have given yourself that 1 million free skill points. Works on existing accounts too, the link is in the description. Now, if you do find this video helpful, please drop a comment down below. I love hearing how you guys are getting on in EVE Online. I love hearing what you're up to, what ships you're enjoying flying, all of that jazz. Please let me know. I'm also running a couple of competitions nowadays in my Discord, so if you fancy winning some EVE Online related stuff, come join the Discord, have a chat with a load of like-minded folks and enter those competitions. Finally, if you do want to help support this channel and keep content like this coming, you can do so by heading across to my Patreon page, my PayPal tip jar, or my Redbubble merchandise store, and I do need to upload some new designs to that. I've got a couple of cool ideas thanks to some guys in the community that suggested a few bits and pieces. Anyway folks, with all of that said and done then, let's jump right in to talking about the Caldari Drake, which somehow I've still managed to make look like a Minmatar ship. Look, it's shields, it's missiles, I can make it look like a Minmatar ship, what's not to love? There are many things that I absolutely adore about this fit. The fact that it's pretty alpha friendly, the fact that it's cheap and easy to skill into, the fact that it can run Class 2 anomalies, no worries at all. Like, genuinely, it's some of the easiest content I've ever done. You could probably push this into Class 3s, but I wouldn't really risk it, and I'm not sure that the time commitment is going to be worth it at that point in time. But also just the fact that it is ridiculously cheap. 91.4 million ISK, including all the ammunition and that I've got inside of it, including the mobile tractor unit, so on and so forth. And you might be thinking, but that's not particularly cheap to me, Benzie. I've just started playing the game. 91.4 million is a lot more than I currently have, and I get that. That's a goal to aim towards, because when you are flying this bad boy, you are going to be making 20 million approximately every 15 minutes. That means you're making 80 million an hour. In just over an hour, you've paid for this ship again. In 2 hours, you've got 2 of them. In 3 hours, you're now running straight profit with backup, and you're making good ISK, having fun. It's that cool. Now, this is a passive shield tank fit. If you're coming across from EVE Echoes, that's a bit of an unusual one because it's not a type of fit that really exists there. It's essentially designed to passively regen its own shields. You don't have to worry about activating shield boosters or extenders or anything like that. You don't have to worry about the fact that, you know, someone could theoretically hit you and then, oh no, I've got to sit here and wait for my shields. It is going to be recharging constantly, and this works so well. So let's have a look at the high slots first of all, talk about the damage, and then work from there. Now, I've gone for heavy missile launches here because we want that range. Being able to hit stuff from range helps reduce the incoming damage. We can kill stuff before it gets close to us. It reduces the amount of damage we're taking, and these do pretty good damage. You could go for heavy assault missiles, but on a slow-moving ship like the Drake, I just don't see it as worth it, because you spend so much time trying to get into range that you never actually get to properly apply the amount of damage that the fitting screen tells you you can do. Now, it's worth noting that if we just quickly open up the information page here for the Drake, you can go into its traits. It should be noted, something I didn't pick up on and didn't point out heavily in the Tengu video, is that the Caldari Battlecruiser bonus, the 10% bonus to heavy assault missile damage, is only to kinetic. It is damage locked, so you are going to want Scourge missiles no matter what you do. Do not go for Inferno or Mjolnir or Nova. You want kinetic. You need the Scourge missiles for this one. So I'm here now currently with Scourge Fury heavy missiles fitted. That's giving us a decent whack of DPS here, 2,500 alpha strike per hit. That is big, big damage. Ultimately, that's at a range currently of 63 kilometers. Of course, we can change this for the precision missiles. We can change it for standard Caldari Navy Scourge heavy missiles as well, which I do recommend carrying all three of those with you, because then you can choose and change as required on the situation to just clear sites a little bit faster. Now the final high slot then is a Core Probe Launcher 1. If you are running JSpace sites, you want a Core Probe Launcher fitted. Even if you have to offline it in order to make the rest of your fit work, get the Core Probe Launcher fitted, because even if it's never happened to you yet, there will come a day when someone jumps you and you end up running through a couple of wormholes and you've lost yourself, or you have a wormhole collapse behind you. I was exploring the other day and I sat there and all the wormholes were safe. I'm checking them as I go. On the way back, it turned out that some people had just finished rolling the hole and I was stranded on the other side. If I hadn't had a Core Probe Launcher, I'd have been stuck there. If you are doing JSpace content, do not undock without a Core Probe Launcher, or at least a friend nearby who has one. And when I say nearby, I mean in the same system. Doesn't help if they're a jump away and then that wormhole collapses. Now, as I said, we have pretty good range on this. We're looking at 63 kilometers here with Scourge Fury heavy missiles. And how do we get that? Well, in our mid slots here, I've got a missile guidance computer running a missile range script. I do also carry a precision script, which I will swap to when I'm trying to take out frigates, because that way you can hit them a little bit harder and get them off the grid quicker. So for frigates, I swap to the precision script. For everything else, I'm running the range script. And ultimately, the frigates will get close to you, so you don't need that extra range anyway. Then we have the shield tank itself, and oh boy, this is where things get fun. Large Shield Extender 2, Large Shield Extender 2, Large Shield Extender 2. We are running 3 large shield extenders on this to push up that EHP. We're almost at 50,000 effective hit points there. That's pretty badass if I do say so myself. Then we have a Pithum C-type thermal shield amplifier and an EM Shield Amplifier II. Essentially, this is because without these, you will find that your electromagnetic and thermal resistances on your shields are not up to scratch. That's great. You'll have, you know, the explosive and the kinetic when those sleepers are hitting you with their missiles, but the second they swap across to their turrets, which do exactly electromagnetic and thermal, they just punch straight through your shields and wreck you. Continuing the shield tanking theme, in the low slots, I am running 3 Shield Power Relay 2s. These are passive modules that are going to help your shield regenerate that little bit faster, and you can see we have a pretty good 183 hit points per second here. That's not bad at all. And some people will drop this into Pythor and then they'll come back to here and say in the comment section, hang on Benzi, you're showing 183 hit points per second, but Pythor's showing something a lot higher than that. That's because in the fitting screen here in game, you are looking at the exact EHP per second coming back that they will regenerate, whereas Pythor takes into account the resistances of your shields and therefore is the effective hit points per second that are coming back. Essentially, you can think of that as Pythor looks at those coming back, but because they've got resistances attached to them, they're worth more in inverted commas. I don't know how you want to think of that one, but that's just how it works. That's why it's going to look different if you load this into Pythor. Final low slot then is a Ballistic Control System 2. This again, it's just extra damage. You don't need a 4th shield power relay. You can put one on there if your skills are absolutely atrocious, but by the time you're running this, you should have fairly decent skills in order to shield tank this comfortably. For our rigs then, a medium core defense field purger, a medium core defense field purger, and a medium core defense field purger. This again is all about pushing up that EHP per second there from our shield tank. And again, I've gone for the rank 1s here, but if you have the ISK, you can absolutely fit the tier 2 versions of these. They will help your shield recharge faster, but it does come at the expense of a bigger signature radius. Now in my experience, that does work out overall beneficial, but it's worth just paying attention to. Ultimately, the final thing then to mention is that we do have drones. Ultimately, I am running, and I say ultimately a lot, I realise in these videos, ultimately, I'm running 5 Acolyte IIs here, and I have backups in the drone bay as well, in case they happen to get blapped. Obviously, don't have to be Acolytes, they can be whatever the heck you fancy, and they don't need to be the Tech 2 versions either. If you don't have the skills required to fly Tech 2 drones, don't worry about it, just go for like Caldari Navy, or, you know, Imperial Navy, or Republic Fleet, or whatever, just go for the fleet versions. They're a bit more expensive, but they have really good EHP, which gives you that little bit more time when someone starts shooting at them to bring them back. Oh, and despite the fact that the downsides of these is, you know, damage to your capacitor, that the fact that your capacitor isn't quite as fast recharging, we're still cap stable all the way up at practically 90%, because there's not really anything running on capacitor, is there? What I think literally the only active thing that uses capacitor is the missile guidance computer. It's insane. Like, genuinely, that's the only thing that I have cycling other than the freaking weapons. It's that simple. Anyway, talking about simplicity, let's undock this, let's showcase it in action, because God, I love this ship. So let's showcase this then in a perimeter hangar. This is a C2 combat site that is considered one of the more tricky ones because of the amount of DPS that it can kick out. It is the highest DPS output of any of the C2 ratting anomalies. So on arriving at site, I have warped in at 0. First thing I'm going to do is control drag, click over everything, lock onto everything, drop my mobile tractor unit out into the field, and then bookmark it whilst we start locking onto everything. Now I've got the precision script currently running on the missile guidance computer, because I know this first wave is going to have 2 frigates, emergent watchmans. These are obviously small and fairly fast moving targets, ergo I want to be using precision to take them out. They're also going to fly towards me, so I don't need the range script active, so the precision just kind of makes sense. Meanwhile, I'm just sitting here. I'm quite happy to be parked perfectly still. Remember, if you're parked perfectly still, then your warper time is always going to be exactly what it says, essentially, on the fitting page. You don't have to align and all that first. If you are stationary, you are pre-aligned to everything, basically. So, we send out the drones, something I'd forgotten to do early on as well. We're going to pull those emergent watchmans apart quickly. Essentially, with a perimeter hangar, when it comes to trying to remember what the triggers are cruisers. Every single time, it is always the cruisers that are the triggers. So if you kill everything else first, then kill the cruisers, when the last cruiser dies, that's when the next wave will spawn. So again, we are just going to take out these emergent watchmans, and they go down ridiculously quickly with the amount of firepower we're kicking out. We then move on to those awakened patrollers. Not really much going on here, no real danger. You can see I've taken a little bit of a hit, and if you wondered why I warped in with a little bit of damage on the shields, it's because I accidentally warped into a perimeter checkpoint first when I wanted to demonstrate the hangar, because yeah, if you look at my my celestial list on the right hand side there, perimeter checkpoint and perimeter hangar look very, very close. You just kind of see perimeter and then a line, and I've actually dragged it out a little bit further so I can now actually tell the difference between the H and the C. But there we go. Play with the missiles a little bit, figure out which one is going to be the best for the scenario you're in. Again, I'm still using the precision there on the missile guidance because I don't need the range, and therefore better application is always going to be better. You know, better is just better. But we're going to now just basically sit here, let these guys orbit, and just pop them. We now come to the end of Wave 2. That awakened patroller is about to go boom in one of its pretty little explosions, and Wave 2 is about to spawn, which has a battleship in it. And that battleship it can be a little bit scary if you're not prepared for it, if you're not expecting it. Now, these have both all spawned in at over 70 kilometers away, which means I need to swap to the missile range script, and I need to go to the Caldari Navy Scourge missiles. For some stupid reason here, I clicked the precisions, and they're not long enough range. They're 42. It's the Scourge, the Caldari Navy Scourge heavy missiles. We'll now load those in, and I'll look at that, 84 kilometer range. That's better. This is basically what I'm going to use for most of the rest of this site, and if you don't want to be changing ammo left, right, and center, if you just want one ammunition type, go for the Caldari Navy Scourge. They will do this pretty okay. You can get faster times by essentially swapping to the right thing at the right situation, but it is more effort, and it means you're carrying more stuff in your cargo. I mean, you're carrying less stuff, but more stacks, which can make management a little bit different. Now, you can see here that just sitting still, I am taking a fair fair bit of damage from that Sleepless Watchman. So I'm just going to hit orbit on the mobile tractor unit. I've got no propulsion here on the Drake at all. Like, my actual flight velocity is pretty pathetic, but a slight bit of movement can suddenly mean that those missiles that are coming my way from those ships just don't apply as well, and there is a chance that those turrets now go from doing hits to grazes to misses, that kind of thing. It helps with the application a bit. It does mean that I might be in a situation where warping out takes slightly longer, because if I'm now moving at speed away from the point that I want to warp out to, then yeah, there's a problem there. So you could theoretically kite as well, but I find that that's going to kind of push you out of range, and it's not going to help with the incoming damage. Now, if you're worried that, oh no, Benzie appears to be going down to about half shields at this point, don't be, because also look at the Sleepless Watchman. The Sleepless Watchman is on half armor, and the armor resistances on Sleepers is significantly higher than the resistances on hull. Ergo, I know that once I've chipped through that armor, the hull will go down quickly, at which point the incoming damage should be considerably lower than I'm tanking with my passive shield regen. You'll see, once the Watchman goes down, things do become a little bit easier. It's also at this point I realise that for some stupid reason, I've been sitting and descanning at only 1 AU, which means I wouldn't have seen anyone warping in until they literally landed on grid anyway. What an idiotic thing to do. I've now pushed that back up to 14.3 AU. Please, if you're going to go ratting in a wormhole, make sure that your descan is actually set to the proper range. I've run about 6 sites. I've run about 6 sites this morning using 1 AU descan. I have no idea how I managed to survive that. I got super lucky. Don't be that guy. You might not be so lucky. But anyway, what to say really? What to say at this point? The drones are doing nothing, obviously, because they're not in range until that Awakened Escort has now arrived. And typically, as I say that, the Awakened Escort is now within my drone command range on this character, so boof, I can send those off and start going there. Off goes the battle crew, the battleship. That's now dead. Nice, beautiful explosion there in the distance, and we can start shooting those Awakened Escorts. Once this one goes down, obviously my drones still won't be able to go into the second one because they're too far away, but we'll get there, we'll get there. And now the passive regen, you'll see, is doing more than enough. Even with the, there you can see I've swapped from range to precision. They are now within range of the missiles without that enhanced script there. So we can swap back to the precision just to make sure we're getting the best application we can, because again, we don't need the range. The rule of thumb is use the range script when you need range. If you don't need the range, if they are within your standard range, use the precision for better application. End of Wave 2, final wave spawning in, 2 Awakened Escorts and a Sleepless Escort battleship. Basically, this is now exactly the same. You can see they've spawned at range again, so I'm going to swap back to the missile range script, because they're just that little bit further away. The precision's not going to help if I can't range them. So now we lock onto everything. We're going to shoot the battleship first. It's a bit of a habit at this point. Essentially, again, remember the cruisers are the triggers, so you want them to die last anyway. There's no trigger on the final wave, but we still want them to die last because that battleship theoretically does the most damage. Killing that means that we take less incoming damage and the passive shield tank is going to hold on to us. I'm still just orbiting that mobile tractor unit at 1 kilometer. This means once this is done, I'm just going to sit here and let all that loot come in. You can see there the MTU doing its thing, dragging the loot in, dragging those wrecks in, looting them and having it all nicely in one place for me. There's really not much to say here, so I am just going to kind of skip to the end and showcase the final bits here, because, yeah, that's how this ship is. Happily sitting orbiting, back to the range script, although I've broken my own rule here. I should theoretically have swapped that to precision. Things would have gone ever so slightly faster with it. It's not huge. And there goes that last cruiser. That ends this anomaly. Beautiful little explosion. We pull the drones back immediately, even though obviously I'm still sitting here. I want those drones back in so that if I have to warp off, I can do so without having to worry that, you know, I've left drones behind. Now, at this point in time, I'm looking for nice screenshots to take of the ship, but essentially what you should be doing is waiting for that final wreck to come in. Obviously, we've just destroyed one ship. We need the MTU to drag it in. You can see the green beam there on the right-hand side of the screen. It's currently... oh, there's two wrecks. One at 27 kilometers, one at 52. Once it's dragged both of those in, I will loot the MTU, and then I will scoop it and fly away to safety. That's it. That's literally how simple this ship is. And there's me taking screenshots. It's a Caldari Drake, and it just does this so simply. Less than 100 million ISK to run a site practically AFK. Like, obviously you need to stay at the computer because you want to be descanning, but for the most part, like, there's nothing much, there's nothing taxing here. If you are just going to use the Scourge, the Caldari Navy Scourge heavy missiles and don't worry about anything else, you don't have to worry about how much ammunition you're going to carry. You don't have to worry about which ammunition should I be using for which different ship. All you have to worry about then is, am I using the range script on the missile guidance computer, or am I using the application script? And the simple rule there is, if they are in range with the precision script, use that. If they are too far away, that's when you use the guidance script. Sorry, if they're too far away, that's when you use the range script. Again, I'm just sitting here trying to grab nice screenshots to use for the thumbnail, but essentially there is also a reason that I'm kind of doing this at this point. You'll see I'm trying to stop the ship within sort of the 2.5 kilometers of the mobile tractor unit. This essentially means that if someone does warp in, I'm stationary and I can just warp straight back out. But otherwise, that's everything. Nothing much to say. Hopefully this is a fit that you will enjoy. You'll find this useful. You'll find the content really easy to clear. It'll allow you to get a load of extra ISK, a load of extra money. That's going to help you buy a Tengu to run some of these sites a bit more aggressively, going up to the Class 3 sites. Then from there, as I said, you can start training into something like the Golem and look forward to Class 5s. That's an end goal for me eventually. It's going to take me a while to skill into that, but I've got a whole ton of content that I want to showcase in the meantime. So anyway, folks, that's everything. Let me know how you get on with this one. Happy sailing, and see you in New Eden!